All right. Boom. Here today, Route 104. Let me start that over. Route 104 back. I introduced myself for the first time, I think, in episode 4, which I didn't realize I hadn't been introducing myself. But I'm Kevin Rigby, and this is Route 104. And I'm here today. I got a lot of titles. The guy with a lot of titles. The editor-in-chief of the Ohio State Journal on Dispute Resolution. Did I get that one right?
It's spot on.
Spot on. Were you going to say on the nose?
I was going to say on the nose again. I keep saying it.
On the nose. A JD candidate. For those of you that, I don't know what JD means, but Journal Dispute.
Yeah.
Candidate.
It's a Juris Doctor.
Juris Doctorate candidate.
No. It's a Juris Doctor.
Juris Doctor.
It's so silly.
He's going to be a doctor. People love to put doctor in front of things, so there you go. And finally, he's a guy that can almost jump over a life-size Connect 4. Almost. For all of those things and more, we're going to hear today from Cameron Jusitice.
Well, thank you for having me. Do you still have that video?
Was I the one that was the owner of that video?
I think so.
Well, I'm going to have to find it because I was going to ask you for it.
Yeah, I don't have it. Yeah. I deleted it on purpose.
Well, Cameron Jusitice, we're going to talk about all these things that I listed today, right? And I have to say, Justice is just a great name for a lawyer, right?
It is, and I got those jokes like in second grade, so pretty early on. And
you knew second grade.
I knew. Yeah, I knew I wanted to go to law school. No, I wish it were that early. It would make my life a lot easier. But
yeah, Justice and Associates. I'm choosing that one.
All right, I like it.
It's a lot better than all the other ones.
It's for sure.
So that's funny that you say that, the second grade piece, because my first question for you, when you look back at where you were at in life, there was a time that you decided on law, and it wasn't the second grade, apparently. And my question or statement or all of the above is, I feel like a lot of people, there are certain career paths that a lot of people just know that they're going to do way earlier on in life. But it didn't seem like that for you. Like, if you're going to be a doctor, lawyer, architect, whatever, I feel like a lot of times that's ingrained from your upbringing, your parents, your expectations, what have you. So it wasn't for you. Why? So then why law?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you're right. It wasn't something I knew early on, but I do think that every single experience I had leading up to law school prepared me for it, as much as you can be prepared, because, really there's nothing that can prepare you for the day-to-day work. But I went through all of those iterations of wanting to be a doctor and actually wanting to be an architect. And I think every single experience leading up to that really shaped my perspective on what was interesting to me and what was valuable. And so really, I think because I'm talkative and because I like interacting with people and I like leadership, people had kind of floated law school to me probably in high school and then in early college, and it never really was serious to me. And then the summer of 2020 rolled around, and I had a lot of time to think about what my life was going to look like. And I was frustrated with the way the world was looking, and I thought, maybe I should use my skills a little bit differently than what I was already doing. And that kind of was the reason, and the rest happened really quickly. And I think that speaks to a lot of the experiences in my life that have become really fruitful for me. They've all just kind of happened quickly and seemingly randomly. So you're right, there's no real long time story of me wanting to be an attorney. It just sort of happened, and all of the experiences leading up to it made it feel right.
Nice. This is a good answer, man.
Thanks.
All right, so now that our knees are touching, I have my next question for you, which is not a follow-up question to that amazing answer, but you decide on law school after the summer of 2020. You decide to leave me where I was at.
Which, wait, can we talk about that? Because I just thought about this yesterday. I was talking with a friend who is thinking about leaving their job, and they have a manager that's like, oh, she's like, I don't know how I'm going to deal with this. I don't know how they're going to react. And I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your just like willingness to be cool and supportive of this decision. Like, we're sitting in your house and it's halftime of a game Ohio State ends up losing, and we're sitting there and I'm like,
that's a trend.
Yeah. Anytime I'm at your house for an Ohio State game, they lose. But we're sitting there and I'm nervous the entire time because I had just gotten accepted, and I'm like, gosh, I have to tell one of my best friends that I'm about to leave this job, when we had conversations about, what are the next 5 years going to look like? Right. What are the next 10 years going to look like here? And so I'm sitting there like, how am I going to do? And so halftime rolls around and I'm like, and I just tell you all this stuff and you're like, that's dope. And we just, and then like 2 days later, you're like, let's do a photo shoot for this. And like, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that level of support, because a lot of people don't get that. People get, managers that are going to lash out, and like that was a game changer. That affirmed everything that I had thought about to that point on that front. So I just, before we go too far, I want to say I appreciate that.
Well, yeah, part of that is, because I cared for you back then. I mean, it's not much anymore, but for more than just the job, right? But also, I had a lot of practice and people quitting up to that point. So
fair enough.
I learned how to take that. I learned how to take that about 4 times that year, right before you did that. So, but no. So within that, like, in terms of the job that we had, like, we kind of work like there are weeks or whatever that are stressful, but we have a fun work environment. And then you decide like, all right, I'm going to go back to school. School's something that you were always good at, but you knew this was kind of going to be another level of like school, or at least at that point, that's what everyone would have said, right? What have you done over the course of the last 3 years to maintain a healthy balance of life and this thing that's supposed to be all consuming?
I think it started before I even stepped in those doors. My perspective going into it was, I'm a person now. I'm going to be a person when I leave here, and I need to keep up the things that I'm interested in when I'm here, because those things will be there after law school. And if you don't keep up on them, like they're gonna fade away, and you're just gonna lose your sense of self. And so I think it started before I stepped inside the walls. And I think the other thing too is my perspective on how long the stuff was going to take to figure out, right? Like we are all the smartest people in the room. And so you come there and everybody's that smart. It's going to take a minute, and this is all tough and new. And so knowing that, I was like, I could conceivably dedicate every waking moment to this place and still not have everything I need, right, to be top of the class or whatever. And so I think that perspective really shaped what I valued. And even though school has always been important to me, it's never been the only thing going on in my life. I think that's why the first year of law school is so challenging in a lot of ways, is you don't work. They encourage you to take it pretty easy on extracurriculars. And so I was only doing school, and that was odd for me. I don't think I performed all that well because of that. And so since then, I've found other things, whether it's in the law school or outside, to do, and that makes my work better anyway. And right. and any time that I've felt like, oh, I need to get this thing done, or I'm really stressed out because I have so much, that's when I found I need to insert the most balance. Like I need to take a break, do some yoga, and then get back to it. It's rarely leaning into it and just trying to like push through it. It's taking a step back and finding that balance again.
So you've always, high school, what was your GPA? What'd you graduate?
It's so long ago. It's almost 10 years ago now. I don't even know. Probably like a 3.7 in high school.
maybe not up there with the Dublin kids,
Right.
but
right. Yeah, fine. Yeah,
Right.
got me through it.
3.7, those are mostly A's, couple B's, your entire high school career, baseball, youth to youth, other stuff, maintains a high average. College, life, a lot of life outside of college, work part-time for the whole time, maintains a what?
3.75, yeah.
Yeah. High. Like, you are seemingly somebody that, you can just do life and do school because, you're that smart, right? Or, like you said, you need the balance for school, for even just school to be good.
Yeah.
What do you see with, like, is that a typical trend, or do people get, like, really stressed out because they can't find a balance?
I think most people overdo it, and I feel like I have this conversation with my friends at the law school a lot. I think it depends on how long a person has spent, after undergrad before they come to law school. If they're a non-traditional student, they typically have a different perspective because maybe they have kids or they've worked for a long time. And I tend to gravitate towards older friends because they have a similar perspective to me on law school. I'm going to work hard at this because it matters, but I'm not going to let it kill me. Yeah. But I think folks that maybe don't have that experience are more inclined to let this space be the only space. And I think it makes them a little more anxious. I think it makes them a little more high strung generally, even outside of the schoolwork. And so I don't think it's common. And I also think, not to sound the way I'm about to sound, but like for someone to be as like high achieving as I have been in that space, it's particularly atypical because so many of the people that have done the things that I'm doing are also top of the class, right? And I'm not that. And so they dedicate probably considerably more time to school than I have. And so...
and you don't even think, with as smart as you are, all of these accolades and praise that you've been receiving, like you say, you're what, middle of the pack, higher middle of the pack?
Dead center. I think dead center.
You're middle of the pack and you're yet thriving. Do you think you could even, dedicate the time to be at the top of the class? And would it matter? Like, how would it affect you? Would you even be able to like thrive? Like, I wonder how.
I wouldn't be happy. I wouldn't be.
I know you could be up there.
Yeah, I'm sure I think there are people that could do that and still somehow be happy. I just know I wouldn't be.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm missing class to go do something that I view as equally as important, on the networking front or something like that, just because I know it'll further my career in another way. And I know there are people that could do it. It doesn't make sense for me. And I think that took a minute to kind of sift through the noise and say,
right,
yeah, other people are doing, 10-hour library days or whatever, right? They're doing those things. I know that doesn't work for me. Like, I need to do 45 minutes of studying, get up, walk around and talk to people, and then sit back down and have the energy to do the work. So I could do it. I absolutely could. I just don't think it would make me happy at all.
And in turn, like, who wants to be around an unhappy person?
Exactly.
Yes. And then do all of these other things even come your way? Because one, you're not networking, you're not fun to be around. People are drawn to you and you're doing the work. And that's so much of it because, you have these 3 years to learn all of this stuff and put you in position to pass these tests and whatever and take the next step. But the real learning, like, this is learning, but like the real on the job learning is also as equally important. So if you can obviously get put in a position by doing these other things, get in the right position where what you're about to go do is going to be invaluable.
Yeah.
you could read it all, you could pass all the tests, but can you get put in a position you're about to go in and really learn that stuff? So it is a balance, and I think that should exist more outside of law school, right? I think a lot of times we look at this like, I feel like a lot of people, when they say you need a better work-life balance, what they're really saying, or I need a better work-life balance, is what they're really saying is, I don't want to work. I just want to have fun or do life over here, which then it's not a balance. You're just kicking it, having a good time, and convincing yourself that you're balanced when really you're not progressing in your career. You're not making, at some point, something's going to fall. So I like the way that, you're like, I'm going to be just as good over here as I am over here.
Right. Well, and I think what you're getting at too is like this misconception that like discipline and freedom are like mutually exclusive. Like I think so much of why I'm able to have the balance is because what I'm doing when I'm working is efficient. Like you can spend 8 hours in the library. How much of it are you actually doing work, and how much of it are you scrolling on your phone? I don't know why I gestured like this. This is how you scroll,
yes.
but that's
the 3-finger scroll.
Yeah, I don't like, that's it is, okay, I get in and I say, I have 2 hours to get this thing done. I get it done in 2 hours, and then I go and do whatever else I want to do with my day. And I think we kind of romanticize law school in that way that, oh, I spend all these hours doing all this work. When in reality, the hardest part is feeling like you're cut out to do the work day in and day out, not the work itself. And so, it's like spending 6 hours at the gym. Like, what do? You should get in and get out and do what you need to do and leave. And so, I think a lot of people are spending way more time for the sake of saying, I spent time doing this.
Right. I'm a hard worker.
Right.
Right. I'm always there. Like you see that. I've seen that my entire career is people sitting in offices and they have the illusion of working hard, and everybody around them thinks they work hard, and somehow I play all day and still get more done,
Yep.
Shots, blah, 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 blah. So with all of that, it's still not easy, right? You're like, don't get it confused that you're saying, oh, you get in, get out, do it well. So what's been the most challenging part of this part of your education so far?
I think I like halfway answered it, but I can elaborate. Like it's feeling like you can and should be there, right? Again, everybody is so smart and has always been that way, and everything has always come easy to us. And so like when you walk in on that first day or during those first couple weeks and everything sounds like jargon and it's confusing and frustrating because you've never done a skill like this, you've never had to perfect a skill like this, it is so scary and intimidating. And so I think that's the hardest part. And I mean, to be fair, like this is the hardest thing I've ever done. But it's not hard for the reasons that are glamorous or fun to say. I'm not like, oh yeah, I wake up at 4:30 and iron my sheets and then run a half marathon. Like that's not how my day looks. But people would, anytime you say, oh, I'm in law school, they're like, oh, that must be really challenging. And I'm like, it is, but not for the reason I think everybody thinks it is. And so I just think when you're around a lot of really smart people that are achieving things and you see LinkedIn posts, oh, I've taken this job, I'm doing this thing, you're worried immediately about what you're doing and whether you're on time or if you're, gonna ever achieve some of the things that they're achieving. So I think that's like sifting through the noise is the most challenging part for sure.
Yes. The sift.
Yes.
A lot of sifting going on in law school.
I'm a good sifter.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about skipping class to network.
Which I haven't done until this year, to be fair.
But what would you say or can you discuss the importance of networking, not not where you're going, right? Like, yeah, there's going to be important networking things that you have to do once you get into whatever job you're going to take. But the importance of networking now, as a student that's on the path there, and what strategies have you found to be effective in building professional relationships?
Yeah. It's weird because, to my point earlier about every experience kind of shaping the way I do law school and my perspective on law school and why law school was right, is that I kind of look at networking, and I don't love saying this, but I think it's the truth. I see it in a similar way to our conversations about recruiting students to youth. Like, it's a numbers game. You're not going to get everybody to say yes. You're not going to get everybody to stay in contact with you or stay in a program or anything like that. Networking really is a numbers game. And also, it's a relationship. Like, you shouldn't be only reaching out to them when you need something. It should feel considerably less transactional than that. And so I think that's really how I approached it, is like casting my net as wide as possible. And it helps that like networking doesn't feel like a chore to me. It gives me the energy to sit down and do the work. On Monday, we had a cool event, and I spent all morning doing nothing other than interacting with people, but then I was so much more productive in the afternoon. And so because it doesn't feel like a lot of work to network, it's more enjoyable to me. And I think
everybody doesn't have that.
Right. I think finding portions of it that are exciting, because, it can look so many different ways, and it can happen so many different ways. Finding little bits and pieces that are fun for you, it may help. But I think, again, like, not being opportunistic has been huge. Like, the first couple weeks of the semester, when all I'm doing is preparing for class instead of like reviewing for finals, or, other things ramp up and get busy later in the semester, I'll just, like, when I'm reading, I'll take a break and I'll walk the hallways and I'll knock on professors' doors and just be like, hey, what's up? I don't need anything. I don't want to talk about class. I don't want to talk about another opportunity. It's just, hey, how are you? And then later down the road, when I do have a favor to ask, it's not like, all he does is ask for favors.
Right.
And so really treating it like a relationship and following up, and, just treating people like people instead of as a stepping stone has been huge for me. And I don't think it's intuitive. You have to think about it in that way for it to work. But those have been really the big things for me.
And, that event you talked about at Youth, we call our fun events. Did they call that cool event? Cool event?
Yes, it was. It was
like, come to the cool event.
Come to the cool event. Yeah, it was on the TV screens and everything. It was sweet.
The cool event.
Yeah.
It's like when I named the camp.
I've gotten made fun of for wearing that shirt so many times. I left the camp, and it was with that the black shirt with the teal writing. And I show up.
It's a bad shirt.
Not great. And I showed up to the hotel. We were at a travel.
But Tron just came out, so it was. Who would know?
It was on. Yeah, it was good.
It wasn't.
It was fine. I still.
But you showed up.
I showed up to this hotel like late. I had already missed a game because I was like, I'm going to this thing. And I actually was from conference. And I show up wearing that shirt, and they're like, the camp. Like, are you lying to us? There's no way this is called the camp. Yeah, and it's happened a couple times.
Yes, the camp and the cool event. All right, boom. So shift a little.
Cool.
Can you discuss a particularly memorable case or legal issue that you've studied?
Oh gosh. I think I do need to think. Okay, so this is fascinating, and I won't go too in depth about like what real world events this was in the context of.
But I can already tell, like, these are the things that get you excited.
Yeah, right? Like, because what law school has done for me is found a way to frame things that are persuasive no matter what you believe. Like, I can take this real world issue that you ask 10 people and 5 of them view it one way and 5 of them view it another, and frame it for them as the way that the legal issues have impacted this, which is not the way we talk about this particular issue, and make them go, huh, that makes a lot of sense. Or, hey, that's messed up, but not for the reasons that I thought it was messed up. And so I think one legal issue in criminal law that is, there's a couple, I'll do 2, that are fascinating is like the self-defense doctrine in like homicide cases. It is just like so malleable, and so like it just takes a good lawyer to like shift the way a judge or a jury looks at it.
There's a lot that you got to sift through.
You have to, as a judge or a jury, you got to sift through the information that a good attorney gives you. And I realized, oh my gosh, the framework that we're operating in is so messed up that if I'm operating under that framework and looking at it objectively from that perspective, I go, huh, that jury or judge got it right. I think it's wrong personally. Mm-hmm. But that's the right decision based on what they're operating within, right? So that's the first one. And then just the other day, we had a couple federal judges in the building, and they were talking about the federal sentencing guidelines. And they were talking about how if you are indicted on three charges, let's just say, and you get acquitted on 2 of them and convicted on another, they can use the acquitted conduct as a factor in determining your sentencing. So a jury can say, we don't think he did this, and it can still be factored in at the same level, not just, this is sort of an afterthought and it only counts for 10% of the sentence. It can be factored in as equally as any of the other factors a judge uses in sentencing someone, which is crazy. You can say, hey, jury, I know you said that you don't think he did this, but I'm going to factor it in and give them 20 years instead of 17 or whatever. Yeah. And the chair of the Sentencing Commission is talking about how that's the first thing they're going to address, because that's wild, and it gives judges, they're able to sort of override a jury in that.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's the point of the jury?
Right, exactly. So that was fascinating too, both in the criminal law context, but there's tons of others that are fascinating, and I could go on for the rest of the podcast talking about things I've learned that would have never occurred to me. And I also think that's like maybe the most important part, is there have been so many things now that I think of that I never would have even considered.
Yeah. So kind of along these lines, the reason you got into law school, or the summer of 2020, or big part of, would you say summer? Was it summer?
The summer, yeah.
Summer of 2020, big part of why. We talk about diversity and inclusion within the context of law school and law in general. Like, these are all the things that shape our entire country, our entire legal system, all the punitive measures and all the everything, right? It all goes back to what this judge, said on this case, and we use all of these things to determine literally everything. So how important is diversity, like, in the very beginning stages within the law school itself? How important is it, and what do you see? How do you see that importance? I'm going to go out on a limb here, and you think, you're going to say it's pretty important. So how do you see that being addressed in the school itself?
Yeah, I think first, and this is sort of like a cultural thing that I don't know how we're going to figure it out, but I think it needs to be figured out before much else can happen. I mean, the Supreme Court has sort of informed a lot of this too. We have to get past the idea that diversity, equity, and inclusion is like a moral imperative, and that, letting Black people and women and gay folks into your space is like the right thing to do instead of something that makes your organization or space better, right? Like the conversation has shifted so much because the way we look at affirmative action and the way we look at diversity fellowships at firms, it's just like, well, we're doing this because you didn't have the opportunity. No, we should be doing it because diverse spaces and inclusive spaces make the workplace better and more effective and more thoughtful. And like, until we shift back, because I think that's what it started as, maybe in a way, right? I think once we shift towards that or back to that, then we can start actually doing something about it. But until people realize that like hiring Black people isn't just the right thing to do, it makes your space better, nothing's going to change on that front.
Right. And I love my favorite argument right now is like, yeah, but I just want to hire people. And if this candidate is the best for the job, then it's, all right. But what's best for the company? What's best for, this person, Julie might be awesome, but what for that position, but how does that position impact the company as a whole? Or hiring just another white guy who may be amazing, but there's a staff of a bunch of other white guys.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important in all spaces, to be clear, but I think it's particularly important in the legal field because you're dealing with diverse clients. I mean, clients come in all shapes and sizes and colors and everything. Like, you need to be able to deal with a diverse clientele, and you having experiences that others don't have is huge in that space. I
love that shapes and sizes.
I know. I don't know why I said that.
Clients come. I mean,
they do.
They do.
It was a good point.
They do. It was. And fat people do get discriminated against.
True. Yes. And like, it's important to like, I think about it in the criminal law context. I had the opportunity over the summer to go to the basement floor of the courthouse where they hold inmates while they're waiting to see their attorney or go to whatever.
All shapes and sizes.
All shapes and sizes, mainly the same color, right? And it was me and one other person of color on the other side of the wall, of the bars, whatever. That's wild. Everybody else was a white man. And so to be able to see someone that looks like you and then trust them to make a decision that's in your best interest is huge. And so, I mean, it's really sort of a ripple effect. Like, it feels small when you're just having conversations in class with people that view the world differently or have had different experiences, but it really, really does impact your clients and everyone.
Yeah. And I feel like one of the more interesting things about law, like everything, we discriminate in so many different, in every part of the world, right? Like every job, every whatever, like there's an opportunity for discrimination.
You're right. Also, one of the things that like I think is so fascinating is part of the job of the law is to determine what discrimination is okay and what isn't, because we discriminate on valid fronts all the time. Like Gavin can't drive a car, and we're like, that makes sense. And we're like, there's not going to be a constitutional challenge about whether a 12-year-old can drive a car.
I asked him to move the car the other day, and he wouldn't do it.
That's an opportunity that he missed. But we do things like that all the time. Like 15-year-olds can't vote and things like that. And so I think it's fascinating the way the law is determining what's okay and what's not, because we do discriminate on every front all the time. It's just some are okay and others are okay, but only if you follow a certain process. And then some are just not okay, period. And it's fascinating the way the law has to parse those things out.
Right. Yeah. And what I was going to say too is that if you do a good job, I mean, you could tell me if I'm wrong, but if you're in criminal court or you're in court or whatever, there's just some facts that can't be overlooked. So it shouldn't matter. It be a black man, black woman, white man, white woman, XYZ, but it shouldn't matter, right? Because if you present the case, there's only so much I can do to look at the person that's presenting it and just, instead of the case itself. I'm sure that is still happens, especially with a jury or whatever. But if we do the jury process right, if we're doing it the right way, it really shouldn't matter who's presenting the arguments,
right?
Because the arguments are what's valid, or the connection those things are making back to, justice versus state or whatever. I don't know what that means.
Sure.
So we answered a lot of these. That's how this works. Question and answer. A lot of different areas of law that you can practice. And here's one of the 2-parters or 3-parters. Do you see a lot of people that come into law school already knowing where they want to go? And then, what I know is you're still figuring that out, using all these different opportunities to say, what am I going to do? I guess not knowing, you don't know what you don't know. And then once you have a friend, doing it, you learn a lot more. But, law to me was like, you're either a paper pusher or you're in court doing XYZ. And there's so much more. There's so many more avenues that you can take. How are you going about figuring out exactly what you want to do?
Yeah, I think that's what appealed to me most about the degree originally, was just how versatile it was, right?
It's like a communication degree.
Exactly. It's the same
I can
thing.
do anything.
Yeah. And like in some ways it's freeing, and in other ways you're like, wow, I have almost too many options. And so I think in a weird way, figuring out how my passions have evolved, there are still like a lot of common threads between the things I'm interested in and passionate about, but they have shifted. Like, and this from over the summer of 2020, we were like releasing statements with Youth to Youth, like about police brutality and Columbus police specific, like things like that. And I was writing large parts of them. And I was like, I like this. And you would look at it and there were very few edits. And I didn't think about it then, but I love writing in that way, right? I love saying, this is what we think, this is why we think it, and this is what you should do about it. And that's all of legal writing.
And everyone loved that. They loved that we did that. And by loved, I mean, I still hear about that to this day.
Was it bad? I forgot.
Statements were great, but the way that it was presented,
whoops, sorry.
And that was important at that time.
Yeah.
And continue.
And looking back on it, I realized, I really enjoyed that style of writing. And so figuring out my passions, I think, kind of goes through that lens first. Like, I like the strategy of litigation in this case, right? Like, I don't want to just review contracts and write up like leases and things like that. I like trying to be persuasive and saying, oh, if I move this sentence here, it makes more sense and is more persuasive than if it's here, and things like that. I mean, even down to style and headings and stuff like that is, seemingly very small, can impact the way your reader ingests the information. And so I love that stuff. And it doesn't really matter, at least at this point, what I'm talking about, because I seem to be interested in all of it so far because the writing is at the forefront of it, right? It doesn't matter if it's criminal law or construction. Like, I enjoy writing in that way. And to your first question about whether people show up knowing what they want to do, there are plenty. I think there are also plenty of people that show up knowing what they want to do, and it changes 5 times before they get out of there. And I think there are equally as many people that show up and have no clue and then figure it out very quickly and stick with it. And I always think it's funny. We have a group of like undergraduate students that are, like all, they're like, I'm pre-law and I'm this and I'm that and I want to do that. And I don't want to laugh because I feel like it's sort of dismissive, but I'm like, it's going to change.
You have no idea.
You have no clue what this, I barely have a clue what it looks like, but here it's nice because it's like refreshing to see them be so excited and passionate about something that they're about to enter. But I'm like, you don't know what this entails.
Right.
But it is cool. There are plenty of people that come in and they're like, yeah, I want to do this, and I'm not changing that for anything.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. And it's, I guess, like you said, the best part about it is you can do so much. And if you start on something and do that for a few years, you can move to this, and you can move in all these different areas. And I mean, that's what drew me to the job that I'm in now. That's why I've been doing the job that I've been doing for so long, is I can do so many different things with under one umbrella. And, I mean, how would I do that without a communication degree? Like, that's why school is so important. Once you get that communication degree, archaeology degree, psychology degree, it's just
the world is your oyster.
It is. So I can't wait to be in the courtroom with my communication degree, fighting on behalf of justice.
Do you think having like me be in this space has like made you more interested in stuff like that? Like, what has that done? Both for your like understanding of some of this stuff and your curiosity around it, because you're right. Like, there's no reason to, I think that's maybe the biggest flaw about, one of the biggest flaws about the law is it's so inaccessible, and like, there's no reason to know it unless you've interacted with the legal system. What has that looked like for you?
So like I said earlier, you don't know what you don't know. And for so long in my life, I mean, even as an adult, for so many of my adult years, I didn't care about politics. I I'll go vote for Obama and then not care again for 4 years until I vote for Obama again, and then not care again for 4, and same with the law. Like, what, I have never been impacted, except for going to court to fight traffic tickets and pleading no contest, which I try to tell people all the time when they get a traffic ticket, don't plead guilty. Don't plead not guilty. You're doing yourself a disservice. It's a speeding ticket. Come on, guys. But I pleaded no contest one time, and for speeding and driving recklessly, and I communicated well, and the magistrate said faulty muffler, and I was like, oh, what does that mean?
No way.
Yeah, he changed my whatever to faulty muffler. But had I pleaded not guilty, I would have had to come back and fight it.
Wow.
Had I pleaded guilty, I would have had, whatever. So in all of this, I've learned no contest is always the way to go, right?
I can't give legal advice, so I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, I've definitely I think there's two things that happen at the same time. Is you're in law school, and I started to have to really interact with the legal system for some other stuff. So there were conversations that we were able to have, and I was also not just interested in those conversations because I'm interested in you as a person and what you're doing. Like, yeah, that's one thing, but there was also like my own personal interest in, okay, how does this work? And I was able to dive a lot deeper into the understanding of how the system and how it all works. And, having access, I think, is a big thing too is I have access to, it's not like I've tapped you like, oh, tell me what to do here, because you can't. But it's just having access to someone who's in a space and, having a different level of understanding of how things work. We don't always, where I grew up and the people that I grew up with, they don't always have the access to kind of expand their thinking on the world, and you don't see a lot of people going into professions that are like law, where, so it definitely helped me to, everybody that's how I look at life though. Everybody that I meet is an opportunity for my brain to expand a little bit, because I was very closed off to a lot of not just the way the world works or not just how law works or politics or what have you, but, I was closed off to a lot of things, and I've always, good thing early on that I started to open up my mind, right? And it's definitely been, our conversations about law and all of that have definitely been refreshing, because it's something you don't think you're ever going to have to, just aside from like, oh, I got in trouble or this, that, like, there's not a lot of other spaces in life where I thought I was going to have to interact with the law per se. And now you just never know how life is going to go. And now I see myself, I'm with the things that I want to do within my own business, within our family's business, within just even the job that I have now, at Youth to Youth, like being in the position that I'm in to be in leadership. There's so many times that I had to interact with the law or use or meet with lawyers or, write this thing up, even more so than just like a position piece, but that I have to be mindful of doing the right thing, saying the right thing, because I'm in this position. It's like, you don't know you don't know what you don't know. You don't know you're going to have to do that, but you better be open to learning about it. And I'm glad that, you're in this position, because all of the learning that you're doing, I can also tap into, all right, what are you learning here? And that has helped frame my thinking in other areas too. And I'm even more excited that when you can give legal advice, I can, give you a few bucks to get it. So, yeah.
It's good stuff.
It is. So last question before we get out of here, Route 104, obviously make sure you subscribe and listen and do all the good things. Share with your friends
and rate
people. Rate
high. 5 or don't even bother.
Listen more than 47% or that's a bit much.
Don't disparage your listeners.
Listen more than to just 18% of the episode. Everybody wants the short clips. We got a lot of clips. We got a lot of good clips. So that's what they want. That's what the people want. Mm-hmm. Last question is, where we talked a little bit about it, what you're doing now, but where do you think you're going to find joy in life in, when you look ahead in the next 5, 10 years?
I think the bottom line is it doesn't matter what space I'm in, so long as that space rewards me and celebrates me for being myself, right? Like, every single space I've entered that I've been successful in has said, oh, you're goofy and you talk a lot. Perfect. That's what we need. That's what I love about my job. When I come back from my clerkship, is I got great advice, ironically, from a guy named Kevin, who was like,
good people.
Walk in, like, set your stuff down and go walk around the office and say hey to folks. Like, we encourage you to socialize. And I was like, perfect. Like, that's exactly what I want to hear. And so whether it was Youth to Youth or law school or any of the activities I was involved in high school, it was always a space that welcomed me as I was, and I could figure it out from there. And any of the substantive work could get done so long as I felt comfortable in that space. And so I don't know. I think, to your point earlier, there are so many options that it could look so many different ways, and I don't want to close off any doors. I want to leave as many options on the table as possible. And that means like these next couple of years are just going to be like me grinding and see where it takes me. But so far, every place I've been successful and happy has welcomed me with open arms, and that's the plan no matter what.
Sweet. Right on the nose, man. Right on.
It's a great video. It's too good.
Thanks for being here. Again, you can find Cam at Ohio State. Go look him up. Can I sit in the courtroom?
Maybe.
Like, is it open? Are some of the cases?
Yeah, it is.
And where are you going to be?
We would just need to chat about it beforehand, probably, if I had to guess.
Like, getting into law jargon.
No,
if you were clerking for someone and I was to come sit in that courtroom.
You don't have to do if. I am clerking for someone.
When you're clerking
there we go.
Next year.
Yeah.
Hypothetically.
Yeah.
And I decide I'm going to come sit in the courtroom. Where would you be at?
It depends on what it is. My judge brings a clerk to trial anytime there's a trial, which is fairly rare, all things considered. But
could we sit next to each other?
No, unfortunately. Okay. It's so sad. But I was in federal court a couple
It's not like a movie theater.
No. It was cool. I was in federal court a couple weeks ago, and like the judge's clerk was like right off to the side of him, and then they would have like a sidebar because they had an issue and they want
best part.
It's pretty cool. They were like, "Oh, we have this issue with the evidence." And so they were like, "Can we take a second?" And the judge stands up, the clerk stands up, and they like huddle, and then all of the advocates are there. And it just was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get to work like this closely with them on this and just listen to what they're saying. It's like being in the huddle with Tom Brady. It really is. I mean, it's crazy. So we won't get to sit together to answer your question. Yeah. But yeah, if I'm in trial, you'd be able to be there regardless. You would just, there's security and stuff. You'd have to be away.
All right. That's it. Peace.